Welcome to episode 6 of season 2 of Matire Gemi, a bi-weekly podcast where we help you learn the Agîkûyû culture, history, and heritage in English and in a fun, light-hearted way. I'm your anchor, Jerry Wadiho Nademojiro Wabaria Kehara. And today, as always, I'm joined by Wayaki and Kingori Wakanyi. Now, today's episode is a continuation of episode 5. In episode 5, we began to walk you down the journey that helped you understand exactly what happened when a man was interested in a bride. What was that process? What were the expectations? What was the magnificence and significance of that experience called Rûracio? In this moment, if you have not yet listened to episode 5, I urge you to begin there because it sets the stage for what we're going to do today. And in today's episode, very simply, Wayaki and Kingori will continue to walk us down the beautiful journey we call Rûracio. So sit back and enjoy and continue to allow your mind to be blown over and over again. Enjoy. Okay, so now Kingori, the wife, has been in her mom-in-law's nyoba for 4 days, right? And she's not been eating her mom-in-law's food. She's been eating her own mom's food. Okay, so then now we're done with 4 days. So now day 5, what happens?
Yeah, so 4 full days are done. She spent the night at her in-laws' place, her mother's, her new mom, and it's a sad event, right? She's kind of mourning that her past life. She's very aware that now she's embracing a new life, and she's been given that downtime to really sit and allow that to really sip in. It's a huge change in her life, and now on the 5th day, things turn around. Because on the 5th day, her new house is now being built. If you recall, we talked about this when we were talking about Moshe. Houses were built in 1 day. So right. There was a lot of work that had already been done to get the right material and what have you. And now you have that all collected. And so the people of that family that she's come to would be very busy. Her new family would be very busy building her home. I remember we talked about, men would usually do the structures that would be standing upright. Women would be doing the ones that are horizontal. So, and there'll be a lot of coordination around building this home. And once it was done, that would be the 5th day. On the 6th day, the boy's mother would, or our groom's mother would give the new couple porridge. And she would make the bedding that would be used for consummation.
So who's making the bedding?
So we're talking about the groom's mother. So now we're in the groom's family, right? And just about everything that's happening is mainly being taken care of by the groom's family. She's now a welcome guest, and now she's part of the family. Right. So that's the process that's happening.
Let me say something. So when you see, just as a point of interest, when you see in marriages, when we attended marriages when we were younger, maybe now, I haven't attended a marriage in a long time or a wedding, one of the gifts that the couple gets is a bed. And this is sort of a carryover from our traditions on that 5th day where the mother-in-law, or what we call the nyashiara of the bride, is making the bed for the couple. Just as a point of interest.
Yeah. That is so cool. I never realized that there actually is some significance to giving the bed, and it's tied to our traditions. Oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I was actually at a wedding just a couple of weeks ago, and that also happened there. This time it was just bedding, the bed in a box. They presented that, and you can see that that's never really left and probably should not, because it's very significant to giving them a fresh start, right? At having a bed. So that's what this was about. So that's your sixth day. The mom usually would also go and collect and help the young girl collect 3 stones that would be built. We're building hariko, right? And there would be a ceremony to light that fire that would include a blessing and a special kerera, a special wisdom was shared around that fire. Remember, we keep saying that the fire should never go out, right? And so they should be taught a lot around about that. And she would borrow the fire from her own mother, for the mother-in-law's kitchen, and transfer that flame there, which is another sign of continuation for this family. So this was a very special day with a lot of special meaning. And
Can
on
I ask
that
a
night,
question?
yes, yes.
And Wayaki just mentioned it. What is the name of a mom-in-law in Kikuyu? Nyahu?
Nyashiara.
Nyashiara. So your mom-in-law is your Nyashiara.
And then the father-in-law is Ishishiara.
Really?
Yeah, that's what you
Ishishiara,
call
thank
them in our language.
I have learned something. Thank you. King Ori, continue with the
All right.
Nyashiara.
Yeah, so the Nyashiara has done a great job here of welcoming our bride. And on that 6th night, there was a symbolic gesture where they would have a young boy and a young girl who are of that family, of the groom's family, who would be the ones to spend the night in that new home, and it was symbolic of bringing fertility, and so they would do that. And on the 7th day, the new bride would move into her new home, and after that they would call it Mudanyawago Tiri, where nothing happened. There was no ceremony. She would be in the home alone. And on the 8th night now, her new husband would join her. And they would consummate this marriage. And they were asked to be there for 2 full days where they could not leave the actual home. They were fed. And that was kind of a honeymoon of sorts, if I may say. Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting. That's beautiful. I mean, I just love how precise this is, how the process is so intentional, and there is involvement in terms of the Nyashiara really welcoming her new daughter into her home, right? And enveloping her in the process and really setting her up for success, like with the 3 stones, giving her the fire and giving her the wisdom. This is so beautiful all the way to day 8, where they've spent 2 days in honeymoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
All right,
remember,
keep going.
and remember, Yakio told us that the 4 days and 4 days on each side were significant. There's the 4 ngemis for the girl. That number comes again. And by the way, this number 8, these 8 days, they have a root in the story of our origin, the Agîkûyû and Mombi story, where Mombi actually did spend 8 days before she got to know Agîkûyû. So this is a deep thing that never used to be skipped over or glossed over. A woman should be given 8 days to prepare for moving from being a girl to a woman.
Yeah, and actually they say in Kikuyu, if I can say it, they say Mobi spent these 8 days akirerera odhigu wake. Basically, she was sad and because she was moving, from her virginity to now becoming a wife. So she spent those 8 days. And then also there's a big significance with the number 9, as we know, Kedamoyuru, those 8 days, because 9 represents the gestation period of a human being. So it's the 9 months that are a child is carried to something new, to become something new. So these numbers that you hear, there's a deep significance and philosophy of how the Mogikoyo used to think about that. When you hear 4 days, 5 days, like the gemi for the kahe and 5, the gemi for the girl are inya, then they add to 9, which is, the gestation period, or the 9 months that a child is carried to term.
That's just, I'm sitting here in so much awe, right, of our ancestors, because again, so many times we think that they were so simple, right? Not we think, we are taught, right? But to start to realize the complexity and the intentionality and the symbolism behind everything they did is just so beautifully mind-blowing, right? So I never made that connection between the 5 gemis and the 4 gemis and the number 9 and the number 8, so beautiful and powerful. So, sorry, go ahead, King Ori.
Right. No, that's really it. And after this period now, the girl would, remember her friends are still around. Remember her posse that followed her.
Her bridesmaids,
Her bridesmaids. They're still around, and they're there for most of this. And they would now accompany her back home, back to her father's home, back to her mother's mushi. And once they headed there, she would be welcomed, triumphant. In fact, they would lift her up and carry her shoulder high as she approached her compound. And the moment she got there, that's where you see if there were darwas or, skins and banana leaves would be laid out for her, so that she doesn't step the ground as she walked back into her mother's house. It would be such a huge thing for her that with special celebration, that would be a beautiful event as she came back home. She would be adorned with gifts, and would actually be given several things. Her father would look for the most expensive necklace possible. We call them madaga in general. And this was the first time she would have gotten something of that magnitude. It was a beautiful moment. So it's during this time.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because I'm like, even back then we liked jewelry.
Oh, yeah.
You know how we love jewelry.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes
it was actually a sign of wealth,
Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes we forget that, in some areas of Agîkûyû areas, you could not easily distinguish the difference between a Mogikoyo and a Maasai, because we adorned ourselves just as much. It was a different style, but, the beadwork was just as elaborate, so sometimes we forget that. There was a lot of beadwork. Obviously, it's different in style, but there'd be a lot of it, is the point I'm trying to make. So, we loved our jewelry. Yeah.
So by the way, why couldn't she step on the ground? And is that similar? Is that why people put lesos on the ground today?
That's exactly it. That's exactly what we're recreating. Yeah. You see, what's funny is all of this usually happens in one day nowadays. The day of the wedding is all of these things are happening, from the hodi karevo, singing, and there being some tassel and all these things. And the lesos on the ground, our bride won't touch down. All these things nowadays happen on the same day. And usually it's the day they're going to get the bride before they go to church, in the way people do their weddings. But these things used to have a lot more meaning. As far as her not touching the ground, honestly, I don't believe I can go beyond that to explain it. Maybe one of these days we'll have someone who understands that in a deeper level. Or perhaps Oyaki might know something around that. But I'm sure that Kerera is there, and we will get to it. We say, not everyone, no one knows everything about these matters. They're very deep, and they're very vast and voluminous. So it's something that you accumulate this knowledge step by step, and it'll be a while before we can answer every single question.
Right. Okay, great. So she's home now.
She's home. and everybody's happy, and they're going to escort her back. And this is the day we call Itara. Actually, that term is a very Kiambu or term. In other areas, they don't call it that. They will just call it Komenya Moshie or something like that. They used to have other terms. But in Kiambu, it was very elaborate. And so I'll give it with that flair of how they did it in Kiambu. Yeah. So what would happen is, the young bride would now be escorted back by really just about mainly all the female members of her family, but also some men would be there. But this is mainly a women's affair. And they would thoroughly prepare for this visit. They would have all manner of shiondors, with all manner of food. And they would, the idea here is they would want to make sure that she has as much food as her and her new husband are going to need from the time she starts preparing her farm to the time she gets to have a proper harvest. So they would really prepare for this. This is now setting her up for success, right? And so they would come, and by the time, and when she got back, she would find her shamba that she had been given, her mogoda, has been plowed perfectly by her in-laws. And then she would find that she had been gifted usually around 200 seedlings of guache and a similar amount of seedlings of doma and anything else that they would typically be farming there. This would be a gift from her father-in-law. And her own father would give her several goats, amwate, harika, and nadege. And then she would also get a goat from her father-in-law. And of course now, and actually they used to call it boriakahio. Upon her return, she would get that. They would bless her home with beer and, do all these libations. They would bless her cooking stones. And then there would be now a proper fire lit that she's now from then on was expected to maintain in some way.
King Ori, if I can just tell you this, right? As I'm hearing you talking, the magnitude of this is just so big, right? It's just incredible for me because as you speak, I recognize the involvement in all parties in terms of welcoming this new bride into the family. Like there is no window for her to feel like she doesn't belong. Because today, sometimes people think about they don't necessarily belong with their in-laws, right? We've heard those stories before. In everything you're sharing, they have gone out of their way. They've plowed her field. They have given her seedlings. Even on her own family side, her mom has given her food. Her father has given her goats. Like literally, both sides of the family are making sure that she is well taken care of, and more importantly, that she fully knows that she belongs in this family. She is one of them. Oh, that is so profound for me.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
Not only that, it's like creating a good foundation for her to be successful within this new family. So she's getting land, she's getting help with the land being plowed because, we know our women were great at, crop cultivation, agriculture. So she's getting a head start. She's been given a mwate and harika and the ege. Like she's been given, it's like she's already been given wealth from the beginning. And then also the fire, which is very significant. There's a deep philosophy of the fire, and I think King Ori mentioned it in the last podcast. That fire is being given by her mother-in-law, and that mother-in-law got her fire from her mother-in-law. So that fire carries, a long lineage of depth and philosophy of that fertility philosophy from
spirit.
a spirit, for many generations, So she's been given a good foundation to start her family. I also wanted to say one thing, that the literal definition of itara is, if you go to a kitchen, it's where the firewood was put above the fire, like the rack. So that's where, you'd get firewood, but then maybe it might not be dry, but because of the heat from the fire down, it dries the firewood. And also because it becomes sooty, so we used to use soot, what is called murare. That's the word for soot in Kikuyu. That's where, because soot is like an antiseptic. It disinfects anything. So that's why you'd find they'd put knives, especially knives that were used, and needles and stuff like that to disinfect, and they'd put them in the itara. So that's I just wanted to say that just as a point of education of what itara literally means.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah, and actually the fire also in general just represented cleanliness, amongst many other things, not just sustenance. It was also cleanliness, because part of what's happening in this ceremony is also a very thorough inspection by the bride's family, who have now, for the first time, they can overcome the knee and can now really look around and see, where is our daughter going, really,
Exactly.
And they would really inspect everything. They would start by looking at the itara to make sure that it's proper, the one that they had built for her. They would make sure there's enough firewood that had already been collected, and that there's enough space. They would also go to Keara. Keara is what today we would call is kind of the incinerator. The trash area. Today is a trash area, garbage dump. But Keara was seen as more of an incinerator, right? Because it was the area where it carried the entire homestead. It was one. Whether there were multiple wives and many meshie in that particular, many nyobas in that moshie, there would be one keara, and they all shared it. And it was a place of cleansing for all of them. So if you go sweep up your compound and you have some things left over, you bring them to the keara and you burn them. And what's left there is clean. So we had a very different view of keara. And the fire was the same fire that was burning in any nyoba within that moshie. So Keara was a unifying and special place that was seen as clean. They would go and inspect it. And the reason why they would inspect it is another throwback. Remember, I keep telling you that there's a layered effect here. There are some things that used to exist in Proto-Kikuyu days, that ended up surviving. And one of these is a story that's given about how there used to be people who actually used to eat people. There were cannibals somewhere within the vicinity, and Gikoyos were very afraid of those cannibals. So what they would do is they would always make sure that this family has not been infiltrated by cannibals. And one of the best ways to find out was to really inspect the keara and see if you'll find bones that are suspicious. So now you're like, we don't want our daughter to go to a family with cannibals. We don't know what will happen. So that was one of those things that this particular Itara event was about. It was, and I don't know how true that story is, but that's how the law goes.
Nganoshia Marimu. That's what those are the folk stories about augurs.
Exactly. And I don't know. Maybe they have. Maybe there's some truth huko nyuma in the distance, but who knows?
No, I think they were used as as a teaching point to don't venture out into the forest, because it was a thing I think that was used to teach children, to I guess don't go beyond a certain place, or don't go past this boundary. You're going to find these ogres that are gonna eat you.
You're right.
Yeah.
So that's our Itara, and it was very beautiful. There would be an opportunity for the young lady to be now taken into the nyoba of her mother-in-law, where she would be sat by very wise women and given very powerful kerera on how to be a good wife, how to keep a man happy, and these kind of things that they would be told, and how to, a lot of how-tos. I don't even know what they are, by the way. I think it's what we imagine is happening there. But one of these days we should have a woman who has gone through that special session. Maybe share some if she's open to. But I don't. It's not something women discuss openly, by the way. Whatever they're told in there. So I think it's a secret.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, but yeah. So that happens, and she's taught some things. And she's well armed, leaving that space and very empowered. And this usually was a very happy event for everyone involved. Nothing but good times. So, Jerry, after this, at some point, there would be another event called Ngodaria Kerere.
Okay.
Remember, we said that Kerere was the bed of the girl.
Yes.
Orere being the bed of the mother. So, our Njoki has left a kerere at her mother's house.
Correct.
And let's assume Njoki has a sister, Jambi. And Jambi is a younger one. And so, they sleep in the same space, all right? But each one of them has a different kerere, right? And Njoki, who's older, is sleeping at the front of this bedroom, this kerere area. She's the one closest to the entrance. So what would happen on the Ngodaria Kerere would be that they would go and destroy her bed. She already has a new bed. Now they're going to go back another day and make sure that they destroy that old bed that she used to sleep on, and now move Jambi's bed forward to where hers was.
The oldest
now, what did that?
The next oldest.
Yes, the next oldest, and they would move him up. And the idea here is really there are many. It's manifold. Number one, she has nowhere to now just run to haraka, and should really think twice before she thinks about abandoning her own home. Now she has her own house, so your backup has been eliminated, right?
Destroyed.
It's been destroyed, and she was part of it, and there's kerera around it and a lot of understanding of what it means. The second thing is that the younger daughter now, this younger sister, has now been blessed, and there would be actually a ceremony to bless her, and she was given gifts by this older sister. And there was a blessing being passed over to say, you're next. And may you also find a mate, and may it be a successful union, So, and that's what if that doesn't happen, then there is almost a kiagararu if she leaves that house without being given that blessing to leave. And this is where you see the order of which young lady would be married first was very important. An older sister needed to be married first, because you can imagine trying to break a younger sister's kerere and then leaving the older sister there. That was also another kiagararu.
Kiagararu?
It is so kiagararu is a term that is used to say you're putting the cart in front of the horse.
Okay.
And it's a mogiro. It's something that's been and it's many types of kiagararus exist. There are things you can't do if your father is there. Why are you doing them and your father is supposed to do them? Or if I'm a younger brother, there are things I can't do if my older brother is around, because we should give them the opportunity to do that. So kiagararu is many types of that kind of stuff, and this is one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. The literal definition of kiagararu comes from the word kuagarara. So kuagarara is literally to jump over. Right. So when you jump, you can't jump over. So your father is the head of the house. You can't jump him over and do the things he's supposed to do. if he's alive, for example. So we used to not have that. It's a mugiro to kuagarara. Like, for example, to receive rûracio. For example, a girl cannot go through the rûracio process if her mother has not gone through that process. That's a really good example of what, like, the girl has to go through what her mother went through, because spiritually she would be jumping her over. She would be...
Oh, now I understand.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, let me dig into that because it's a little delicious. So let's say a woman's mom has not been rashiriod. And for her to be rashiriod, and I know I'm saying this wrong, for her to receive rûracio...
You're saying fine.
Okay,
you're
for her to
saying it fine.
receive rûracio, then her father or her father's family needs to go and pay rûracio first to people on her mother's side, correct?
Correct.
And then and only then can her father now receive rûracio on his daughter.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, Jerry, so you're bringing this, I know you're bringing this up because we've received many questions like this. And so the most important thing to understand is, and we received a question, and I know I'm going into this early, but we received a question about, if my wife's parents just said, don't bring rûracio, we've blessed you and everything.
Yeah, so the father-in-law says, the father of the son says, no, the father of the wife.
The bride,
of the bride says, don't give me rûracio, I'm blessing you in your marriage, yes.
You see, it's not as simple as that, because what it shows here is very various things. It means that maybe the father never paid rûracio for his wife.
I see.
And so if he did not, he doesn't want to accept it, because he knows when he accepts it, he gets a kiagararu. Like, our ancestors count against him that he has not done his part. Does that make sense? So it's very important to... And then also, there's downstream effects. So, okay, this couple, they don't rashia, and then they have children, and then the children want to get married, and then they want to rashia. Or they want to be... if it's a girl, the future husband wants to pay rûracio.
Right.
You see what kind of downstream effects it can happen. And these situations happened because of westernization, and obviously there are some religious faiths like Christianity or Islam which in the last 10, 20, 30 years have said, no, we should not rashia, everything, we should follow our faith and not follow our traditions. But what this does is it creates downstream effects that these debts that have not been paid eventually have to be paid. If they're not paid by this generation, they'll be paid by the next and the next and the next. So it's very important to understand why a man doesn't... Because if a man never paid rûracio for his wife and he receives rûracio for his daughter, that is very, very bad.
So the advice here is...
And these are... And these are the problems that we are facing today in most of our families. These are the problems we have. I would say, it's difficult to go against your father-in-law and what he says, but that's the understanding that the man should have about that situation.
So with that understanding, then he should make the decision of, do you go and talk to your father-in-law, right, and about how you can actually start to pay rûracio or what's in the way, or do you let it go and accept the downstream effects or consequences that you have just shared with us? But at least you're making decisions with eyes wide open.
I'll let Kingori take that one.
Jerry, that's a very unenviable position to be in.
Yeah.
Because remember, Ûthoni the bride's family doesn't set conditions. The groom's family does not set any conditions. It is the bride's family. So usually when the family of the groom, including this young man, when they approach and they say, our young man loves your daughter and we want them to get married, or we want her to be one of our daughters, what happens is it's just a question. They ask, what do we need to do in order for this to be so? And if the father of the bride simply says, nothing, I bless you, it's very difficult to now say, no, we must. Okay? We must do this because of this. No, it's very difficult. The guy already said nothing. And that's pretty final. So unless the father of the bride has gone through some education as to why it's important and they have changed their mind, it's a difficult thing to move forward from.
It is.
Yeah, and that's all there is to it. Remember, he's the kegoto on that side. And so there's no brother-in-law who can step in. There's no uncle. There's nobody. Yeah, so if he akifunga njia, it's sad. That's about it.
That's hard. So does that mean that then the bride is never fully adopted spiritually into her husband's moherega? It would mean that from a Mogekoyo's perspective, right? So
yeah.
But I think these issues ought to be looked into individuals. It's really hard to say generally what the issue here is, because there's more than just those borishiamirogo, which is probably mostly what the gentleman does not want. There's also koreanira na konyuanira. To eat and drink together is also a form of rûracio.
Okay.
Maybe these things matter, but it's a difficult situation. It needs to be studied and needs to be looked into by gentlemen or adhuri who understand the specific issues in that family and help them go through them, step by step. This is also a clash of cultures. That gentleman who's saying he doesn't want is is Western, and it might be no different than going to Russia to ask for a bride. You'll do what you're told. They'll tell you this is what we do,
Right.
And at that point it's hard to say that there's too much you can do about it.
I see. Thank you, to our listener that posed this question, and I hope that this answer that Wayaki and Kingori have provided have given you some more insight and perspective in terms of what to do now, where to go from here. So thank you, and I hope this was helpful. All right, so the other thing I wanted to mention before we continue, and I'm not sure who'll go from here, whether it's Wayaki or Kingori, continue us with the story, is if you want to see, we actually have on our Instagram and Facebook page a picture of the nyoba. So as you guys are talking about kirire, in my head I was picturing the nyoba, and the nyobas were huge, right? They were not these post-colonial hats that we think of, right? That happened with colonialism, right? When our family structures were kind of collapsed into one. So, so if you want to see an image of the nyoba and how it was segmented, and the kirire and orere of the wife, of the mom, that Kingori is talking about, go onto our Facebook page and or Instagram page. You will see it there, and Twitter too. All right, so I'll pass it back to you guys so we can keep going.
In fact, you triggered me, so let me say something about nyoba. We keep imagining that our people are better off post-colonial, and it's hard to make an argument that's wholesome, looking at everything where we can't boil down the whole ocean. But if we look at nyoba alone, okay, most of our people are living in dwellings that are less glamorous than they did pre-colonial. I want you to let that sink in. Most of them. There's, your middle class, which isn't that big, they're the ones living in nice houses, in major towns and major cities. But if you go mashinani and in these informal settlements where the majority of our people live, their dwellings have become less than what they used to be pre-colonial. They're not enjoying their spaces like they used to. Just a provocative thing I thought I'd put out there.
It's huge. Yeah, no, it's huge. Because we think that Westernization brought us all this greatness, and it did bring us a lot of great things, right? But it also took away some of our greatness as well.
Absolutely. So, Jerry, this is there's another step here called kuneromete or kunamete, and this is the one you've been waiting for, because you've been asking at what point are we going to have this back and forth where the men are discussing with a lot of gusto where, you know, how many goats and those kinds of arguments would pop out. This is it.
The real negotiation.
And this is the real negotiation. And what would happen is the bride's father would send for the groom's father and say, please bring some johiaku namete. And so they would bring this beer with them, usually 6 gourds of it. And once they would do that, the gentlemen, there would be 4 elders, 4 council, keama elders, who would be present. Usually these were seen as independent witnesses, right, of the ceremony. The gentleman would have the groom's father would also bring a brother and other men in their moherega or family. And first of all, of course, they would be welcomed. They would go into the house of our, Joki's mother, and they would be fed and given oshoro, wa muhea, and muere, exactly. And they would, once they were fed, they would break out the beer, and then the groom's father would, indicate that they came so that they can be, literally, they can break sticks for them. Kuneromete. And what this really meant is they were asking, yes, we came and gave a down payment. Remember, we gave our 39 goats or so.
Right.
So now they're saying, what's pending? What else do we have to do for this Rûracio to be fulfilled? And this is where, remember we said typically we're talking about near 100, mirogo, keda na keda, 99, as the bori they were given for what we call mirogo or runo, that went to the father of the bride. And this was usually not very controversial. It was a known figure. But after this, these are when the discussions would start around, was the girl worth that? And remember, we were talking about if there had been a child born prior and things of that nature, then there could be discussions around, are we going to reduce that because you had already been given, other goats for that purpose, and so on and so forth. These discussions would start here. Then they would be told about all the other goats that will have to be brought. There were 5 boris that were called Shia Ogedi, which would go to the uncles of the gentleman. Then there was Goimashia Moherega, paternal uncles. And then there would be Goimashia Moherega. Goimashia Moherega were 6 fattened rams that would be slaughtered throughout this process at some point before Gurario, and they would be eaten. They have to be eaten. And this is why there was so much feasting around this time, because it was a merrymaking. And a lot of johi would go along. And every single time they met, there has to be like those 6 or 8 gourds or more being delivered, and a lot of drinking went on. In fact, there was a popular song that used to say, "Neamo na nenyuo na daremo konyua deda benayo." Like, we're going to drink, and if we can't drink it, we will shower with it, right?
Yeah.
So, they used to. It was a merry-making time. There was
add to that a little bit, which is so beautiful for me, is the idea that this negotiation, and I kind of want to know why, right? Because I could have it wrong, but I think that a lot of this negotiation today happens before the actual marriage. But in this case, the marriage has already happened, right? So this is not a negotiation from a perspective of wealth building and getting what you think you're worth, right? Your daughter's worth. This is just a merry-making negotiation that is not intended to benefit either side, right? But to keep both sides in a good place. I just think it's interesting that it happened after, right? The bride was already a wife.
Right, and this is what we were saying. If you remember, we talked about a divergence. You know, there were those folks who went all the way to Rûracio prior to handing over the bride.
Oh, I see.
That exists too, you know, and that seems to be what the church preferred and you know, kind of required for people to do, so that now they can do a white wedding after that, which was seen as the real wedding, right?
Okay.
So that happened too, but it's a controversial thing, and because there are claims that that's used to happen in some areas too, but it's still a controversial claim because, as we know, Rûracio in particular, and we'll talk about it here at the end, Rûracio was not something that was rushed, and in fact, usually it would happen once there were children born of that particular wedlock. So, but you know, there is querera like that, and I think we will, you know, over time we'll have to, you know, really get to the bottom of it. That there are areas where all of these steps would happen before the bride went with the young man. But we know of many, many other instances where that's not the case, and so that's why we gave the story this way.
Let me say something, King Ari. Yeah, Jerry,
Sure.
you know, so Kunerwa Mete is like, basically, Kunamete is like to be counted for what your balance is. That's what they're coming to do. But remember, if they're told your balance is 60 goats, remember, we say, Rûracio Rotidiraga, like they have a lifetime to pay this balance. They're not, it's not being demanded there and then, right? And so, despite that, they're coming out of respect to understand, okay, well, you know, what's the balance of our Rûracio? But it's not that they have to pay it there and then and finish the Rûracio there and then. In fact, that's discouraged, that you can't pay your Rûracio in one day. You know, I know a friend of mine told me that he asked them how much. I'll write the check today, you know. So
I just malizana with it.
And you know, a lot of people do that, but you know, it's hubris, and it's not the right. It's not the way our forefathers envisioned.
Yeah, not at all.
This relationship between these two families to begin and to start and to continue.
Right.
So, remember what Ûthoni is. Yeah.
Right. And remember, the bride, the two fathers don't talk. They don't open their mouth during this whole process. They have their representatives who are talking on their behalf.
Yeah.
These elders are there for that purpose. These elders can complicate matters because they're like lawyers, you know. There's all this, you know. Today we would call it the what do you call the small writing at the bottom? There's this fine print, that they are constantly debating about, and that's what it really is happening here. There's a lot of hitherto unknown things that will start popping up. There is dosho. Dosho is if something happened during this process that was not proper, then they might seek to get a fine out of the groom, right? And there's also something that was called boria or shongi, you know, that could pop up. You could be told you're ugly.
Horrible.
Jerry, the groom could be told
Oh, the
he's
groom,
ugly.
okay.
Yes. Yeah, and he has to give another boozy to compensate for that, or he's too short, or has a funny eye, you know, anything, you know, and all these funny goats were tacked on. You know, usually would be goats that those who were there sitting there would probably have the first dibs on, and I think this is where I used to have that energy come out of it, and it's not in bad faith, by the way, you know, but And also, both sides would want to show their prowess. You know, you want to show that you can't be easily taken advantage of. You also are aware that you have certain rights. And so this back and forth, and there is alcohol involved, can be very animated, you know. But, you know, today, like we had said earlier, the main debate is around, yes, we've agreed these are the many goats, but since we don't want goats, how much is a goat? And that's going to be the big debate, because Jerry, you can tell me 100 goats, I'm okay. But if you tell me one goat is 20K, then I'm probably not okay. Yeah. If you tell me it's 4K, I might be okay with that. We might roll with it. So those were the sort of things that would cause a lot of animation during this process. But it was a good thing. And once they would agree to the numbers and have a good understanding of what was pending, they would now hand over actual sticks to the father of the groom and say, this is how much Rûracio will be pending, and each stick would represent a set number of goats. And that's why it was called Kuneromiti.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And in different regions, they would use different things to represent the mete. Sometimes they used dried goat feces, what they called bibi.
Yeah.
So regions, different regions, Nyeri, Murang'a, and Kiambu did something. They used a representation to show that balance. But Kuniro Mete is as King Ori is saying.
And a little bit off topic, if I remember right, if a woman is pregnant, right, you cannot do Rûracio at the same time, correct?
Yeah,
because it's too magogona.
She has to first give birth. It was more than just. I think there's also a practical application, which was that she has to give birth first, and then you talk about whose baby that is, and all these other things that have to go through koharaihu, that's what they used to call it, and to first settle that matter before you can get into another matter. Mogekoyo never used to want to mix issues that were important and juxtapose them. That was always something that was looked down upon. It's less than ideal.
Yeah, and it's also, you can't have two magogona going on. Like, you can't do two. A magogona is when you're talking to God, right? So you can't have two things. When a woman is pregnant, she's in a constant conversation with God in terms, from an Agîkûyû perspective, in terms of that fetus developing into a child. And so, the Mogekoyo didn't, just like Ingori is saying, didn't want to juxtapose or mix. And, any child that was born before marriage, there was a process of determining, which is what King Ori is saying, koharaihu, which was to determine who's the father and what are the consequences and repercussions of that.
Okay, awesome. All right. So at this point now, is the Rûracio process done?
The Rûracio process is almost done, right? Almost done. We now have what people will tell you is the most important part of things that used to exchange hands, which are called maha or maruta. And, bori that we've been given as part of Rûracio, those are great. But also maha and maruta were also part of Rûracio. And they were very specific. And what would happen is,
so what is maha
sometimes down the... Yeah, so these are things that have always been asked for using the same trajectory we just talked about. The bride's mother, the groom's mother, when the father was marrying her, they asked for that. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm mixing this up. Forgive me. It is following the lineage of the woman. So this young lady that we are bringing into our family today, her mother and her mother's mother, and going back all the way to as far back as it can go, there was a set of things that were asked for that will continue to be asked for, and that was called mogabo. Things that have to be asked for during this process. Other things, everything else we've talked about, there could be a reason for that not being so. There could be a reason for why it wasn't 99 goats and it had to come down to 60 or something. There could be all manner of reasons, right? But when it comes to maha, everything has to be given. It has to be fully given, accounted for. And these usually were not. There was nothing here typically that had was an animal, unless that animal has a very specific nogorio or a very specific reason for why it was being asked. And we can talk about that in a bit. But typically what would happen is, there'd be another meeting. And this time everyone is very familiar with each other. And then there would be idoshiamodhuri, which would have been asked for during that kuneromete. They would be told these are the maha that would be asked for as well. And that's where you hear things like guoya modhuri, actually it was called gedhike modhuri narokoa. This would be, nowadays it's a suit that's taken to the father of the bride. Then there's rohiorajora, a sword and its sheath. Then there was oke, ihebe, there was jongwa, which is the three-legged seat, and all these manner of things, tobacco, several number of things that would be brought. You see, so far, nothing here is a goat or a sheep or a cow or something of that nature. And then there would be Idoshianyina Amwiretu, who is the mother of the bride. Again, there would be Guaya Motumia, which now is a dress. There would also be a chair for her. There would be sufurias nowadays, but back in the day there were nyogos and itetes and meduri, and these are the things that were used for purposes of the kitchen. And then there was Idoshia Tumia. All the other women of that clan would also have things that they were asking for. There was shiodo, there was axes, there was ropes, and there was oshoro and all these things. Nowadays they take sodas, right? There was a long list, including mashuka, and I want to talk about mashuka a little bit because this is very important. The mashuka is probably the most important thing in that list. Why? For the women, because it represented this young lady when she went to be for her irua. And so what it is motiri. If you remember, we talked about wakeri. Wakeri, who was the person who is embracing the young lady. She would be an older woman, an older lady, but still young, who would brace her during this period. She would be there. She would be present. She would be one of these women. And because there was blood involved, usually her clothes would have gotten soiled. And so she's being given a new maleso, a new shuka. Yes. And so it's one of those things that are happening there. Nowadays we say that, our daughter burned some lesos where she was learning how to cook, and that's what's happening. Reasons we've changed things, and that's good, right? It really is very good. But typically that's what that would be about. And so there would be all these things. You see, everything that's being asked for had such a specific meaning that none of these things can be stepped over. You can't not give them. And then on top of these things for Maruta would include some livestock sometimes. And usually some of them would carry very, very heavy meanings. Like you would hear something like, there's one family, I remember they were talking about Boria Gakonia. And that Bori turned out to be that one of their great-grandfathers somewhere up the lineage had killed someone, and so had been expelled from the community. And upon his return, at some point, he had to first sleep on the ground, on the bare ground for such a long time that they always remember that and always want to signify that he slept on that gakonia, which is what they call it today. And so from then on, so that curse, that dahu that followed that man for killing someone, so that it may no longer follow the families. Every time they had a daughter, the grooms would have to give that bori so that they can break that curse. And that daughter wouldn't bring that curse into this groom's family. So there were so many things of that nature that whatever you're told to bring, you better bring them. And they used to say these are the most important things that you had to fast. Don't worry about the Borisha Mirogo and all the other goats that you have to bring after this point. Take care, those you can take care of after. And that's what we call Morashia Emwe Otatera, who is someone who always brings, even if they don't have, they bring the little that they have. You don't have to bring 10 at a time. Even one is good enough. Just make sure that you keep bringing slowly. And if you do that, then you're a great Modoniwa, and you're a great man who no one can talk ill about you just because you're not bringing 100 at a time. So Morashio is that Otatera is something that we aspire to too, because then that means that we are making multiple visits and that we're being good in-laws.
Right. So just to add on to what King Ori is saying, he's explained the Maha and Maruta very well. Each of the things that was asked for, and it could be that the etymology of Maha, the word Maha is, Kikuyus like to shorten words. It could be Ma'e Haha, like the truth is here. And that's why King Ori is saying these are the things that are very important. Like, for example, the Nyogo, today they ask for what is called a big sufuria or what we call a roreja. It represents, the Nyogo in our culture represents the womb. It represents fertility. So each of the things that was asked for and is asked for today, that has been asked for centuries or generations, those things have very serious meanings. Even Rohirwa Jora and Rohiona Jora, they have a philosophy. The tobacco has a philosophy. The Itaroro and all those things, they have philosophies that we won't talk about here, but they are things, when you're asked for those things, you should think deeper, because like we said earlier, like the Mogekoyo used symbolism to explain deep things without explaining them per se. I wanted to add that.
Wonderful. That's a great addition. Thank you for sharing that. So now, are we at the end of the Rûracio process?
We are, yeah. but not really. Remember, Rûracio to Viraga.
That's right. But at least the initial stages of the process. And this is fantastic, because a lot of times when we think about Rûracio, we think about that negotiation that happens before the marriage, right? And as you guys have painted this journey from last episode to this episode, there is now this awareness, which is so beautiful, of how extensive the process was. And there was a reason it was so extensive. So that's so amazing for us to put and wrap our minds around, so that we no longer simplify it into this simple transaction that happens before two people get married. It is more than a simple transaction. It has so much symbolism, as Wayaki likes to say, and it was really a meaningful and purposeful journey. Okay, well, thanks so much for that. I do have to ask, right? So I want to talk about two things, if it's possible. What is Rûracio? We don't even have to go deep, but I know I've heard of Rûracio many times. And then I also kind of want to understand kind of the role when a man was polygamous. Was it the same process?
Yeah, I can say that. Let me talk about. So Rûracio, at a high level, that comes from the word koguraria, which means to. Literally means to injure or to cut. So Rûracio is that process of. It's what we call Ûthoni in as one of the marriage steps in the process of Ûthoni. it's sort of like the penultimate or the ultimate end, not an end because it's just a step where the man tinerias his wife the Keade. And it's, today you see, when you hear about Rûracio, people say it's the wedding. No, I don't think, some people consider it the wedding because we are thinking of it from a Western perspective. The Rûracio is symbolic to grafting the woman into your family. You know how you would do a bone graft, or it's really like you and her are the same.
You're
thing.
enjoining.
It's just exactly, and so that's really what's happened. That's the spirit of the Rûracio process, or that's the meaning or the significance of the Rûracio step in the Ûthoni process.
Yeah. And one thing I can add is this was when, after this point, because of the significance of this event, divorce was seen as impossible after this part. Once you've done it, you're spiritually an entity,
You're spiritually fused
You're
together.
fused. Yeah, you're fused. Yeah, so after this, then, any talk of any divorce would be very hard to accomplish. It was hard to begin with, but I think now we've closed the window. And this was a finality. This was now when sometimes, nowadays you see the kind of women who are being Rûrario'd for today. It's almost like they are sure they'll never leave. They are, they, like everyone is sure this woman is now 100%. There's no chance there'll ever be some kind of parting of ways or anything, and she fully belongs there. And this reminds me of there's a saying, and actually it was shared by one of our listeners who is your namesake, Jerry, and it goes like this: Jogoma jega nei korero. And there are those who say Jogoma jega nei korero.
Yumaga ikorero na
Yumaga
ikorero.
ikorero. Kana yumaga ikorero. So it sounds similar, but it's two different things that are being said. So Jogoma, of course, for those who don't know, it's the war club, the one you see Maasai gentlemen carrying. Gikuyus obviously had that too and still do. And the way the Jogoma was extracted from the tree by the person who was a craftsman, they would look for the joint where the branch extends from the stump or from the stem. And so the question here was, when you are getting a good jogoma, is it how it grew? Is it about how the tree grew, which is ikorero? Or is it how you extract it, which is ikorero? The way you will kora the jogoma from the tree. And that's one of those philosophical quagmires in Agîkûyû culture, where whoever you talk to will argue one or the other or both. But what's happening is, in order for you to extract that jogoma, it'll really it'll be formed. The way that tree formed itself, obviously, the way that tree grew, the way that tree formed, has a huge contribution to the way the jogoma will look, feel, and perform. And at the same time, the expertise of extracting that jogoma, obviously as well, is what really determines its function and capacity and everything else, right? So which one is more important is the question almost. And this is the nature versus nurture debate that we see in the Western society. So its application is really well seen here in the Ûthoni process. When you are extracting a girl, a woman, from her family so that she can become your wife, what's the most important thing? Is it how she grew up? Her mannerisms, the way she was taken care of? Or is it the way you bring her out of that perfect environment she grew up in into this new environment and allow her to settle in and become a good wife? What's the main important question. Is it her upbringing or how you marry her? And that comes in here very strongly. And I'll leave it to the listeners, and maybe Njeri, one of you know the answer.
One of them, Jerry's knows.
One of them, Jerry, knows the answer. But that's seen here, where that's why we're doing all of this. That's why we're spending this much energy making sure that this young lady, we understand it's not easy to leave one family and go join and actually be a pillar of another family. It's not easy. We respect women and how they transition. And so that's why you're seeing this koro motumia oyo. She's being koroed with so much respect, and so much is being done to make sure that this is a good and viable marriage, and that she becomes the kind of woman that everyone expects her to be. That is what's happening with Ogekoyo
I love
culture.
that. So in the end, Rûracio is not necessarily what we think of as the wedding. It is like you said, the fusion. And if you do step into that Rûracio stage, and you have that ceremony or that experience, I'm not sure if it's a ceremony, then really you're saying, I am sealed, I am fused into this family with this man, and the man with the woman forever.
You are. And, another contrast with, the Western philosophy on marriage. Marriage in our culture, or Ûthoni, it's not until death, because we do believe that there's life after death. Once you're married into a family and you go through the Rûracio process, you're married to that. You're a wife who belongs to that mohirega, and you can't leave. You can't. That's why King Ori is saying there's a finality to it, because you're married to your husband for all eternity. From even in death, you're still
in
married.
spirit.
Yeah, your spirits are enjoined, so to speak.
Okay, Wayaki and King Ori, I have to say that this whole process over the last 3 episodes on the Mogekoyo's philosophy on marriage has demystified the whole idea of marriage and what we thought of it to me. So thank you so much. It has also demystified and provided a lot of clarity around what Rûracio is. And for me, my mind is still blown at the idea that Rûracio is not bride price, but rather it was a mechanism to set the young man and the young woman up for success. It was some form of marriage insurance. It was some form of a prenup agreement as we think of it today. But yet the entire experience of marriage and Rûracio was about fusing and bringing those two families together in a really meaningful and deep way. And to me, that is beautiful, and our culture is beautiful. Thank you for listening and for joining us on this journey where we honor our history, where we honor our heritage, where we honor our ancestors. We are grateful. You can find Matire Gemi on social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can also find us on Clubhouse, where we will occasionally host some live discussions following some of our episodes. We look forward to seeing you. Our website is matire-gemi.simplecast.com. Our email is matire.gemi@gmail.com. And this podcast is hosted, produced, and contributed to by Wayaki Yeshanga, Kingori Kanyi, and Jerry Diho. Thank you, and please share this widely.